I moved into the PG on a Thursday afternoon, sometime after the rain had stopped. The auto dropped me off at the mouth of a narrow lane, slick with fresh mud and lined with aging concrete houses, each stacked too closely against the next like teeth in a clenched jaw. The building itself was 3 stories high, with moss creeping up the corners and laundry strung loosely on rusting balcony rails. It was quiet. Too quiet for what was supposed to be a girls' hostel. The landlady, Mrs. Potty, met me at the gate. She didn't smile, just motioned me in with a flick of her hand, as though she'd already forgotten why I was there. Her eyes were small, tired. She wore a red cotton sari and a thick sweater, even though the humidity still clung to the skin. 3rd floor. Room 4A. You'll share with Sweta. That was all she said before turning and walking away. I didn't expect a warm welcome. Rent was cheap. Location was ideal, 10 minutes from my office on foot. I wasn't here for comfort, just sleep and a roof. My expectations were low. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step echoing faintly. The walls had the faint smell of detergent and something else underneath, damp plaster, maybe. A soft humming came from somewhere above. It didn't seem mechanical. Room 4A was near the end of the corridor, right next to a closed door labeled 4B. The lock was unusually large. Dull brass, but newer than everything else in the building. Sweta greeted me without getting up. She was curled on the bed closest to the window, knees tucked under a worn shawl, a paperback folded in her hands. Her voice was flat when she spoke. I cleared the lower shelf for you. That night, I couldn't sleep. The fan spun slowly above me, despite the power having gone out earlier. I checked the switch twice. Off. Still, it moved, just slightly, like it was remembering how. I blamed my mind. New place. New job. Restless nerves. But then came the knock. 2 gentle raps on our door. Delicate, like someone hesitant. I sat up. Sweta hadn't moved. The room was still. Did you hear that? I whispered. She didn't answer. I waited. Nothing else came. The next morning, I didn't mention it. Maybe I dreamt it. Maybe the wood shifted. That's what I told myself. We settled into a rhythm. Sweta and I didn't talk much, which suited me. She worked night shifts from home, some online tutoring job, and I left for the office early. We crossed paths at odd hours. She always seemed distracted, like her thoughts were elsewhere. It was 3 nights later when I noticed the time, 2:13 a.m. I'd woken up needing water. The power was gone again, leaving only the dim outline of streetlight filtering through the window. I got up quietly, not wanting to disturb Sweta, and reached for the bottle on the table. Then, 2 knocks. Same as before. Not urgent. Not loud. Just enough to confirm someone was outside. I stayed still. Listening. The hallway beyond our door was silent. I considered calling out, but something held me back. An animal instinct, maybe. The sense that if I acknowledged it, something would change. The knocks didn't come again. I returned to bed and kept my eyes on the ceiling. In the morning, I finally asked Sweta. Did you knock on the door last night? Around 2? She didn't look up from her tea. No. I thought you did. Why would I knock on my own door? Her expression didn't change. She just sipped her tea and said nothing more. The next day, I noticed something odd about room 4B. I had always assumed it was vacant, but on my way back from the bathroom, I thought I heard something from inside, a light scraping noise, like a chair being moved. It stopped the second I paused. The door was locked. No light came from underneath. I asked Mrs. Potty that evening as I passed her in the courtyard. Does someone stay in 4B? She gave a short shake of her head. Storage room. Don't worry about that one. Then she added, don't lean on the door. The lock's loose. I hadn't leaned on it. Later that night, around the same time, 2:13, I sat upright in bed. This time I hadn't been asleep. I was reading. The fan was still. The window open. 2 knocks. Not on our door. This time, it came from the other side of the hallway. 4B. The sound was softer, more distant. But clear. Deliberate. I sat frozen, heart in my throat, waiting for something, anything, to follow. Nothing did. Sweta stirred in her bed. I turned toward her. "Did you hear that?" She rolled to face the wall and said something I couldn't make out. It didn't sound like her voice. Too low. Too calm. In the silence that followed, the scraping noise came again, barely there, then stopped. By morning, the air inside the room felt heavier. Like something unspoken had entered during the night and decided to stay. I left for work early, trying not to look at 4B as I passed. The hallway was narrow, poorly lit, the walls close enough to brush your shoulder. I kept my eyes forward. At work, I tried to stay focused. I told myself I was being irrational. Old buildings creak. Pipes knock. Neighbors exist. Logical explanations always win. But something lingered in the back of my mind. That fan. The knocks. Sweta's voice, not quite hers. The smell that hadn't been there before, burnt hair and damp cloth. By the time I returned that evening, I had convinced myself it was all manageable. Maybe even explainable. But as I climbed the stairs, I noticed something that broke that fragile logic. The door to 4B had moved. Just slightly. It wasn't flush with the frame anymore. It was open by less than half an inch. Just enough for air to pass through. Or something else. No one mentioned it. Not Sweta. Not Mrs. Potty. Not even the girl from room 3C who passed me on the stairs and kept her eyes locked on the ground. I didn't touch the door. But I could have sworn I smelled something from the gap. Charcoal. And something else. Something older. Like breath. I started keeping a light on at night. Just a small desk lamp beside my bed. It cast a soft orange glow that didn't reach the corners of the room but helped me see enough. Enough to feel like the dark couldn't fully press in. Sweta didn't say anything about it, though I noticed her glancing at it once, her face unreadable. The knocking hadn't returned in 2 nights. But the hallway outside still held a strange stillness. I began holding my breath whenever I stepped past room 4B, almost like I expected to hear something breathing back. That morning, a Friday, I woke up earlier than usual. The air in the room felt colder than it should have been for late October. My blanket had slipped to the floor. When I bent to pick it up, I saw something strange. The door, our own door, had small scuff marks on the inside. About knee-high. Like something had scraped against it repeatedly. I ran my hand along the wood. Rough. Uneven. The kind of wear that takes time. I didn't mention it. I told myself I might not have noticed them earlier. That maybe they'd always been there. At the office, I found myself watching the clock more than my screen. I kept calculating how many hours were left until night. Until the hallway. Until that quiet moment when everything felt too still. Sweta didn't talk much that evening. She sat cross-legged on her bed with her headphones in, scrolling through her phone, lips moving as if she were repeating something under her breath. I didn't interrupt her. Instead, I made myself tea and left the cup on the windowsill to cool. Steam curled upward, then flattened like it hit something invisible. Around midnight, the lights flickered. Just once. Then again. The fan stayed off. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay flat, facing the ceiling, eyes open, waiting for something I couldn't name. The lamp hummed faintly beside me. I listened to that sound like it could keep me grounded. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., the bulb dimmed. Not out. Just less bright. And then... Priyanka. My name. Soft. Drawn out. Spoken from the other side of the door. It sounded like Sweta. Exactly like her. But I turned. Sweta was asleep, back turned to me, her breathing slow and steady. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I barely blinked. The voice came again, just above a whisper. Priyanka, come see. I stared at the door. The air in the room had gone still. Too still. I could hear the creak of the wood as something shifted on the other side. A faint dragging sound. Nails or cloth, impossible to tell. And then silence. I lay there until morning. I must have drifted off at some point, but I woke to sunlight spilling through the curtains and the tea still untouched on the sill. Sweta was already up, tying her hair in a loose bun. You talked in your sleep, I said casually. She paused. Did I? You said my name. She gave a small shake of her head. I don't dream much. Her tone didn't carry any curiosity. No denial. Just a flat statement. Then she left the room. That day, I skipped work. Instead, I went looking for someone else in the building. Anyone who might know more. I started on the second floor, knocking gently on doors, pretending to ask about the internet connection, the power cuts, anything to make small talk. Most girls didn't answer. A few opened the door just enough to say they were busy, or not interested. One, a girl with glasses and chipped green nail polish, looked at me for a long moment before quietly saying, "Don't open the door if it knocks from the left." I blinked. What? She didn't repeat herself. Just shut the door. That evening, I stared at our door from inside. The hallway split in two directions, left toward 4B, right toward the stairwell. I pressed my ear against the wood. Nothing. But my own heartbeat started to sound too loud. Sweta came back late. She looked tired. Not physically, but like someone carrying something too heavy in their head. As she brushed past me toward the bathroom, I caught something in her reflection in the window. She didn't blink when she should have. It was probably just the light. That night, I left the lamp on again. I curled beneath my blanket and faced the door. Waiting, though I didn't want to admit it. Nothing came. No knocks. No voices. But around 3, Sweta sat up. I watched her, unsure if I should say anything. She stood, walked to the wall, and faced it. And then she whispered something. Not in Odia. Not in Hindi. I don't know what language it was. Her hands were at her sides, fingers twitching. The way people's hands do when they're dreaming about holding something they can't quite grasp. Sweta, I said softly. She didn't react. I got up, took a cautious step forward. Before I reached her, she turned sharply and climbed back into bed. Not slowly. Not with any drowsiness. Just a sudden, mechanical movement. Like something mimicking sleep. The next morning, I pretended nothing had happened. So did she. I started paying more attention to mirrors. In the stairwell. The hallway. The window near the kitchen sink. Sometimes I saw things, quick flashes of someone turning just after I did. Not my face. Not quite. The door to 4B remained closed, but something had changed. There were faint lines in the dust on the floor, trailing out from the bottom. Like someone had dragged their fingers from underneath. 4 marks. No thumb. I didn't touch the door. But I stopped walking too close to it. I also started keeping my shoes inside the room at night. Because 2 days ago, I found them turned outward in the hallway. As if I'd stepped out. But I hadn't left the room. Not since the night the light dimmed. And the voice that sounded like mine asked me to come outside. By the end of the second week, I'd stopped expecting sleep to help. The days felt normal enough. I went to work, ate my meals, replied to emails. The building didn't change in daylight, same peeling paint, same quiet corridors. But at night, it shifted. Not visibly. Not dramatically. Just enough to make everything uncertain. That Monday evening, I stood on the landing for longer than usual. I stared at the hallway leading to 4B. The bulb above flickered softly, casting thin shadows that bled into the walls. Sweta hadn't come back yet. I stepped inside alone and bolted the door behind me. There was a new mark on the floor near the window. A thin arc, like something heavy had been dragged an inch then lifted again. I checked my bag. Everything inside was untouched. My books were still aligned. The water bottle uncapped. My toothbrush wet. I hadn't used it yet. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding on to that small, unexplainable thing. I didn't want to think about it too hard. I just sat still, listening. There's a particular quiet that only comes in buildings like this, where you can't tell if you're alone, or just not the one being noticed. Sweta came in just before 10. She didn't speak. Didn't glance my way. Just placed her bag on the floor and sat near the mirror for a long time, brushing her hair in slow, careful motions. I don't know how long I watched. Eventually, she turned to me. Her voice was flat. "Don't answer it tonight." "Answer what?" But she didn't respond. She lay down without turning off the light. Around midnight, the electricity cut again. The silence that followed felt deliberate. I didn't move. The air felt dense. The lamp beside me, now dead, reflected my face in the darkened window. But it wasn't right. My head turned before I did. I blinked and it matched me again. I lay back, pretending not to notice. Trying to breathe as if everything were normal. Then came the first knock. Not loud. Not insistent. Just a measured rhythm. Knock. 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 This time, it came from both doors, ours and 4BS, at the same time. I could feel it. The vibration in the floorboards. Like something was walking through the building with purpose. Sweta didn't stir. I sat up, not sure if I wanted to check or wait. My feet felt heavy. The kind of heavy that doesn't come from exhaustion. The knocking stopped. I waited. After a minute, I heard breathing outside the door. Shallow. Uneven. Too close. Then a voice. Low. Familiar. "Priyanka. It's just me." I didn't move. The doorknob turned slightly, stopped, then turned again in the opposite direction. Slowly. Like it wasn't meant to open, but was remembering how. I backed away and stood in the far corner. My phone had no signal. When I looked at Sweta, her eyes were open. She wasn't looking at the door. She was staring at me. Expressionless. And then she whispered, "Don't open if it comes from the left." Same words I'd heard before. Same tone. Not hers. The sound of the knob stopped. And then, nothing. I don't remember falling asleep. I must have. In the morning, the door was still locked. Sweta was gone. No sign she'd ever been there, her bag, her books, everything missing. I went to the landlady. Told her my roommate had vanished. She looked up from her newspaper slowly. "You're alone in that room," she said. "No," I insisted. "Sweta's been here since I moved in." Mrs. Potty narrowed her eyes. "You're in 4A. That room's been single occupancy since last March." I didn't speak. She folded the paper and pointed toward the staircase. "You've been under stress. Don't go poking around things that don't concern you." I returned to the room and opened the closet. Empty. Not even dust where her things had been. Later that day, I knocked on the door of the girl with green nail polish, the one who warned me. She opened just a crack. "She's gone," I said. She nodded, barely moving. "They leave sometimes." "Who's they?" But the door shut softly. I sat on the third-floor landing for hours that evening, watching light move across the walls. I tried not to look at 4B. But eventually, I did. The door was open now. Just a little. wide enough to show the edge of a mirror inside. And part of the bed frame. Nothing else. I stood up and walked toward it. Not quickly. Not out of curiosity. Something quieter. Something that felt like inevitability. Each step forward made the air colder. The light seemed to dim with each breath. I reached the door and paused. From within, I heard my voice. A perfect copy. Calling my name. Whispering it again and again. I stepped closer. The mirror inside showed the hallway, but I wasn't in it. There was no reflection. Only the room. And the fan turning. Slow. Soundless. I leaned in. The floor felt soft under my feet. Then, behind me, a whisper. Close to my ear. Come see. I turned sharply. No one. When I looked back at the door, it was wider now. Wide enough to step through. Inside, everything was still. Perfectly arranged. Dustless. But the bed was made up with my blanket. My bag sat against the wall. My shoes by the door. I stepped inside. The mirror showed me now. But something was wrong. I smiled before I meant to. And I haven't stopped since.